All right, guys, this video might be a little bit chaotic. I initially started to compare the new Sirui 40mm autofocus anamorphic to the new Blazar Apex 50mm, but then Blazar sent me out the new 35mm, which should be out very soon. I'm trying to now mix this in halfway through the video. You guys will see. Also, before all the bias, shill, sellout comments starts coming in, both of these companies sent me out these lenses. Neither of them are seeing any of this before you guys are seeing it. I have no brand loyalty or affiliation with either of these. I do not have any ownership over any of these companies. There's weird rumors going around. It's very bizarre, but I guess, I don't know. Let's talk about, the obvious, who is what, like who's for, there's, again, everybody's going to have a different opinion when it comes to these lenses. Also, guys, we're out here in Joshua Tree and it ended up being a lot warmer than expected. I bought the shirt and I think it might've been a women's shirt because it was a little too tight on me. Haters gonna hate. So again, let's talk about who should buy what, I guess. So while technically this is a Sirui review video, Sirui did send me out the lens. Blazar did send me out both of the Apexes as well. So if you think I'm biased, go ahead and think I'm biased. Personally, I like... All right, guys, now we're going to compare the bokeh on both of these lenses. You're going to see in real life uses, sometimes they look kind of similar. Other times you see a huge difference. I think if you have a mature eye when it comes to anamorphics, you're gonna see the big difference. But for someone that's kind of new to anamorphics, you might not see a huge difference. So the first test we're gonna start off with is this just classic Christmas light bokeh test. And you guys will really see the differences. And then we'll go into the real use case so you guys can see the difference there. So I'm now rolling on the Sony a7C II, but I'm gonna rack to infinity here. And you can see the focus gear will keep turning. You'll see what's different with the Blazar Apex, but this is currently at infinity. I'm going to zoom all the way to minimum focus. They look kind of like a stop sign. It's almost boxy looking. So I guess, technically you could call this character, traditional anamorphic character, not exactly. Technically still adding some sort of textured separation since there is a shape there, but it's not like the traditional shape that we're used to when it comes to anamorphic. So there's our Blazar infinity, and you can see we have a hard stop there. It stops. So it kind of helps you. Now there has been times where just to push it, I rack it back and forth, and that does kind of confuse the lens sometimes. So if you're thinking you're gonna get this to, put on focus motor and all that, I don't know how secure it is. And I've been having similar issues with the Sirui as well. So let's just focus to minimum, but you guys can see the bokeh on here, way more actual 1.5x looking bokeh. I don't know what Sirui is doing to get a funky bokeh like that. I think some people might like it. Personally, I prefer the bokeh on this. No, Blazar's not paying me. Sirui's not paying me. These are just my opinion. So if you're someone who thinks this looks better, that's totally okay. Anybody that tells you you're wrong, don't listen to them. But personally, I think the Apex has better anamorphic, traditional looking anamorphic bokeh. All right, guys, in this segment, I really want to show you guys what happens to the anamorphic bokeh as we start closing down the aperture. Now, currently we're on the dual lens APL Mini Prime, the 43mm. This is a spherical lens. So I just want to start off with this so you guys can see what a spherical lens looks like once we get bokeh on there. So we're wide open on it at T2.4, and I'm just going to go to minimum focus, and you can see we just have your standard spherical looking bokeh. The dual lens set of lenses, they are really clean at APO, but they do have some character in there as you guys are seeing. Now let's start with the Blazar Apex 35mm, then the Sirui 40, then the Apex 50. So now we're on the Blazar Apex 35mm. Again, all these autofocus anamorphics, the Blazar and the Sirui, are both 1.33x anamorphics, but the Blazar is getting more of a 1.5x looking bokeh. Again, my Blazar Apex 35 review video, I'll go over, I think, how they're doing that, but I'm gonna go to minimum focus. You're gonna see the bokeh, we have a stretch bokeh. And you can see when we go into the corners, that stretch gets even more intense, which personally I love. But you see the light back there, it's more consistent with that 1.5. This almost looks like a 1.8 or 2x. All right, now we're on the Sirui 40mm and we're wide open at T1.8. We're focused on the camera. You can see right off the bat, this lens looks a lot more flatter, I would say. But let's go to our minimum, and you guys are already seeing what's happening here. It's like not exactly an oval. There's like almost edges to it. Yeah, we're still getting a little bit of that de-stretch, just a little bit, but there's a weird shape to it. All right, guys, now we're wide open at T1.8 on the Blazar Apex 50mm. Let's go to minimum focus, and there we go. You can see already the bokeh looks a little bit more normal. And then just for good measure, we're back on the GOAT, the Atlas Mercury 42mm. Let's just go to minimum focus. And you can see we're getting a good amount of anamorphic bokeh. All right, guys, I'm watching this back with you. Try to not pay attention to just the large light, but look at the smaller lights. Look how edgy the Sirui is, and then how smooth and how similar the Blazar lenses look to the actual Atlas Mercury 1.5x. The minimum focuses are different on all the lenses, so we're gonna get a little bit more bokeh on some of them versus the other ones. But yeah, you can see again, the Sirui really does look great. I like the color a little bit more that's coming off the Sirui. I like it most on the Atlas. But overall, personally, again, these are anamorphics and I want the anamorphic look, and the Blazar is giving us that the most. All right, guys, we're back in Super 35 mode. I want to show the character between both of these lenses. We're quickly losing light, so I'm going to try to run through this insanely fast. We're currently at T1.8 on the Blazar Apex. I'm going to go back about 10 to 15 feet, and then we're going to close down after, and then we'll do all through the Sirui. So you'll see. I hope this is focusing on me, but you can see I'm just, I think I'm probably 10 feet away from the camera. This is wide open on the Blazar Apex. Now, the beautiful thing about anamorphic is when you close down, for instance, we're now at T8, and you can see on the Blazar Apex with the barrel distortion and, the slight character that it has, it still looks pretty magical. Now I'm gonna go back. You can see we still have a little bit of character here. So you'll see when I go to the Sirui, even at T8, they're probably gonna even out a little bit. But again, since the Sirui has more pin cushion distortion, it's gonna look a little bit more maybe flatter, I would say, and a little more clinical possibly. We might lose some of that charm on there. So you guys can see we're now on the Sirui. We're wide open at T1.8. It's telling me on the camera right there. Now we're gonna come back just like we did before. I'll be sure to go back and forth between the Blazar Apex and the Sirui Autofocus anamorphic. So far from what I've seen, I feel like the sharpness is actually similar. The biggest difference is, we do get a little bit more sensor coverage on the Sirui, but more importantly, the Sirui has pin cushion distortion and the Blazar Apex has barrel distortion. On top of that, I think the Blazar has a little bit more of that anamorphic character and charm to it. If you're someone that wants more of that anamorphic charm and character, the Blazar Apex could be the way to go. But if you're someone that likes the cleaner look, a little bit more of a flatter, edging the spherical look, I think the Siruis will be more for you. So now we're at T8 on the Sirui, and yeah, our light's obviously dipping a little bit, so hopefully the exposure is going to hold. But now we're at the same distance, and you're going to see again, currently have the Sirui 40mm on right now. We're going to test face detection. You guys can see it right here live to see how it does. I have my Monitor Plus app so I can see, yeah, it's grabbing me right there. My hat's still on. You can see it tracking. Looks pretty good. And you guys can see what that bokeh looks like behind me. Again, it looks like stop signs. It's a very weird bokeh. It's interesting Sirui did that. When I'm dead center, it holds pretty good. If I go off to the side, it starts to get a little bit wonky because there is even more edge characteristics on both of these lenses. So that's going to be a thing on both lenses. And come back here more. You see face detection still on me. Not bad. Let's try the Blazar out now. This Sirui lens is incredibly noisy. You guys can hear it there. Like, that's kind of crazy. If you're anybody that likes using shotgun mics, you probably won't be able to use it with the Sirui. I don't recall the Blazar being that noisy. I'm just gonna stand in front of it because that's what makes it go wonky. Don't hear a thing. All right, guys, now we're on the Blazar Apex. Picks my face immediately up. Real close. Also, again, look at that bokeh. Night and day. It's okay if you like the Sirui bokeh more. Personally, the Apex bokeh is crushing the Sirui. So stay in frame. Let's go backwards like we did at the Sirui. Come back into frame. Picks my face right back up. So I'm wirelessly monitoring on Monitor Plus straight to the Sony a7C II. So from the back of here, it's doing literally just as good as the Sirui. We're just gonna compare the Sirui 40mm autofocus versus the Blazar Apex right here. I'm looking at the back of the Monitor Plus app. Not gonna lie, the Sirui looks pretty damn good. I'm gonna walk towards camera. We're gonna see how the autofocus holds, and we'll do this on both lenses as well. So let me just walk in here. Yeah, the Sirui held pretty damn good. Excuse my dry lips. We are out here in the desert. I am dehydrated. I'm turning around, see if we're going to hold on focus. It's holding. So the Sirui is holding pretty well. Let's go to the edge of frame here. We are shooting on the Sony a7C II. See, we lost focus a little bit there. There we go. I think that's in. So we're on the a7C II. We are in the APS-C mode. These are Super 35 lenses technically. We will go over coverage at some point as well. Now we will switch to the Blazar Apex. All right, guys, now we're on the Blazar Apex. Obviously, the Sirui is a 40mm. The Blazar is a 50mm. So we're a little bit more tighter just by 10mm. You can see already just from the back of Monitor Plus, the Blazar Apex definitely has more juice. Blazar has not told me the lens design. Again, we'll go over all of this, but I think I might have figured out what they're doing. I could be totally wrong, but we'll find out. But now, the moment of truth, I'm using the latest firmware on the Apex. The Apex came out. It shipped before the Sirui. I know everybody's going back and forth. This came out before this. Who gives? But I think I'm on the third firmware now. Both of these lenses, there are some quirks when it comes to autofocus. You guys got to remember, these are the first of the first. This like technology, autofocus anamorphics. Time to do our autofocus test. I'm gonna come in slowly. Yeah, you can see the Blazar Apex is holding. I do have glasses on. I probably should have took the glasses off actually for this test, but I guess we're pushing the limits on this. But from the back of Monitor Plus, it's definitely holding my eye. The Sirui was doing pretty much the same thing. So let's go back. And then moment of truth will be when I turn around. Does it hold? I lose signal on Monitor Plus, so I'm not sure if it held or not, but it's still on me. You guys got to see, again, anamorphic. It's just, we could shoot this on spherical, but you guys can feel how poetic this view is on anamorphic. But it's doing the similar thing that the Sirui did, where on the edge, it doesn't know what to do for focus. You have to remember, anamorphics aren't about being perfect. I know everybody wants to bicker about this, but honestly, if you want clean and clinical, just shoot spherical. Just use spherical. What's the point of shooting anamorphic in the digital age? It's, you know, to get more characters, to be a paintbrush, to be a painter. Anyways, I'll stop being grumpy and ranting. All right, guys, we're going to test our sun flares now. We're going to be shooting wide open, currently on the Blazar Apex 35. So far, the Sirui doesn't seem to flare much, but the Apexes have, I think, just enough flare. It's not too much. It's not too clinical. There's some juice into it, some character. So let's look at this Blazar Apex 35, see what it does. We are in APS-C mode as well. You guys can see the flare is not too intensive on this Apex 35mm. And we do have a little, I don't mind this flare. I don't mind the flare happening right here. It's kind of tasteful, actually. You can see it right there. Now let's throw on the Sirui, and then we'll do the Apex 50. All right, guys, now we're on the Sirui 40mm, and you can see our flares right up over there. Interesting. A very similar little orb flare down there. You can see it right here. That's kind of interesting. Overall, the flare looks kind of similar. There's not really one or other that I like more. But yeah, that's kind of interesting. They look fairly similar, but different at the same time. I don't know. Let's throw on the Blazar Apex now and see how that looks. All right, guys, now we're on the Blazar Apex 50mm. And you can see we got even more flares on this, I would say. Passing by down here, you can see we have another little horizontal flare on the bottom here. We have that same exact orb. Maybe that's coming from the V&D because I'm using the same V&D on them. No, it doesn't look like it because I'm opening and closing it and it's not really changing it. So very interesting. But you do see, again, the anamorphic flares are more prevalent on the 50mm, which personally I like, because if I'm going to be shooting more compressed, I don't mind if it gets flared out a little bit more. But I will say it's not too intensive. Like we can scrub through it like this. It's not too bad. I don't mind that at all. Got my trusty flashlight. This is the Sirui 40mm. Those flares look surprisingly good. I definitely like these flares a lot more than what Sirui has given us before. Those are actually really freaking good. I'm pretty impressed with this actually. That's a win for the Sirui. Granted, that's just with this flashlight. With different light sources that can change, obviously. All right, now we're on the Blazar Apex 50mm. The Sirui was at T4 on accident, so we're just gonna run it in T4 on this as well. So you can see totally different looking flares than what we're used to. I kind of like the Sirui flares a little bit more, shockingly. I mean, these still look pretty good. But yeah, those Sirui flares, that was surprisingly good. Blazar has been doing more of like these, I don't know where these side flares are coming out of. Sometimes I don't like them, sometimes I do like them. Now let's throw on the 35 and see what that looks like. So now we're on the 35 and we're at T4 once again. Let's see what they look like. So they pretty much just look like the 50, pretty consistent. Ooh, I like that right there. That little orange orb over here. You guys can see that. I will say, I think I like the 35's flares a little more than the 50's. Well, let's just go wide open real quick. So you see that's the 35 at T1.8. That's the flares coming off of that. All right, guys, we're gonna do a distortion test. Mr. Connor McCaskill's gonna stand in for this. Everybody has an issue with, you know, the Sirui has pincushion distortion. I don't like pincushion distortion, but the Sirui is clean enough to where you could adjust it in post. I'd rather not do that. But then the Blazar lenses have even wilder distortion, and sometimes I have to correct that as well. But it naturally has barrel distortion already. So it's not, you know, I don't know. You got to pick and choose. So we're just going to do a distortion test here. Mr. Connor McCaskill's going to stand in for it. We're on the Blazar Apex. We're going to start on there first. As Connor went out of frame, obviously the autofocus isn't sticking on him. But then we come back into frame. It goes and picks him up. Again, we're on the Blazar Apex right here. This is definitely Blazar's cleanest lens and best performing lens. And it has autofocus, which is pretty wild. But again, we are in Super 35 mode. All their lenses perform pretty well in Super 35 mode, honestly. Okay, now let's throw on the Sirui. Now let's test this. Again, this does have pin cushion distortion. I know, again, everybody has their difference in what they like. Personally, I don't like pin cushion distortion because I feel like it pulls you out of the image. So you can see we lost the focus, jumped a little bit quicker. That's not a good or bad thing. Obviously, settings make a difference. It is taking a moment to grab Connor again. There it goes. It's interesting. Again, with all these lenses, there's going to be a lot of firmwares to come, guys. Like, you got to realize this is, again, new technology we're dealing with here. All right, guys, we're on the Sirui. We're going to test Super 35 coverage versus full frame coverage. Both of these lenses are marketed as Super 35 lenses, but with the Blazar Apex, I have been shooting this in full frame. I don't know if you guys know this, but 16:9 full frame sensors, the vertical height is actually closer to Super 35 film. I've been using the Blazar Apex on full frame, but that's for a final 2:1 crop ratio. It basically crops out the vignetting. There is vignetting on this. The Sirui might be cleaner. So again, we're in Super 35 mode right here. I'll just stand right here. Okay, and then we're gonna go to infinity. I'm just gonna walk away. We'll see if the autofocus held me. I'll put my back up against the, there we go. So now Again, we're in Super 35 mode. All right, guys, now we're on the Blazar Apex. We're back in the APS-C mode on the Sony a7C II. You can see the Sirui is in hand right here just for proof, I guess. It looks like it's focusing on me. Who knows? Let's do our test where we walk away. I have no idea if any of these lenses are holding autofocus while I walk away and stand here. Should be very interesting. We're in APS-C mode. We're on the Blazar Apex now. Now let's switch to full frame mode. You're going to see there's a lot more vignetting on this lens design here. You definitely can't cheat it if you're trying to do an anamorphic crop in full frame on this. But if you're going to do a 16:9 or 2:1 final crop and crop out the edges, you'll be able to clear it. I'll show you right now. All right, guys, now we're in the full frame mode. And again, we're still in the Sirui. This looks pretty damn good. I have a feeling if you shoot this in full frame, you're going to get more juice out of it, which Sirui subscribes more to clinical clean lenses and design, even with their anamorphics. I think that's just what the owner and engineer likes to do. That's full frame mode. Now let's walk. I don't know if you guys can see Sedona is attached to me. We're in the desert. Anyways, we're in full frame. You can see the vignetting from the back of the Sony a7C II. Feels like most of it is covering, which is crazy. So technically, I think Sirui probably could have marketed this as a full frame lens with slight vignetting, but it's probably just safer just to say Super 35 because, you know, there's a lot of dumb people on the internet. Yeah, time to switch back to the Apex now. All right, guys, now we're in full frame mode on the Blazar Apex. You can see a lot more vignetting on the sides here. So again, you can't cheat this unless you do 2:1 or 16:9 final deliverable, which I have been doing. I basically been treating this lens as a spherical character 16:9 lens. And here we go. Now we're focused out more. Hopefully it's focusing on me. We'll see. I'm really excited to get back home and go on the computer and see how the autofocus held up between both of these lenses. But yeah, this is full frame mode on the Blazar Apex. But while I'm trying to help you guys navigate on which lens that you should invest your hard-earned money on, I understand, I get it. I'm going to show you some of the physical features, and then I'm going to show you, I think, the big core reasons on why you might want to go with the Sirui or the Blazars, or the Blazars over the Siruis. So let's start with the physical side of things and how they differ, and then we'll go into those core reasons I was just talking about. When it comes to the Blazar Apex, Blazar gave us hard stops when you put it into manual focus mode. So one quirk about the Apex is the autofocus switch here. It feels backwards. I'm pretty sure that's backwards. The manual focus is in the front, autofocus is towards the back. So it's not a huge issue. It is kind of a weird choice they made. But anyways, when you go into manual focus mode, we have hard stops. You can hear there are hard stops on there. And the Sirui, when you're in manual focus, the ring will just keep spinning. There's no hard stops on there. Don't get it twisted though. They are both focused by wire. So even though you do have hard stops, the Blazar is purely just, you know, calculated internally. So if you're thinking you're gonna get like mechanical cinema lens, you know, focus precision, you're most likely not going to. Like if you put this on a focus motor, there is a possibility that maybe it'll get switched up and it's not gonna be as fluid as, you know, like a true mechanical cinema lens. You see on the Blazar, this is our aperture ring right here. It is declicked, is like a fluid aperture ring. When you go to the Sirui, you have an option to make it a clicked aperture ring, or we have this option here and you can make it declicked. Some people might like that. I'm assuming if you're somebody who's, you know, might get into the system purely to do stills photography, having a clicked aperture is traditionally more stills photography. Personally, I don't care too much. Both of the aperture rings are far back towards the mount, and so I don't accidentally hit it too often. From there, we do have an extra button on the Sirui autofocus lock. Personally, I don't ever use custom rings or custom buttons or anything like that on lenses. It's cool that Sirui put this on the lens like that, but personally, I have no need for it, but maybe you do. Now, let's talk about the big factors when it comes to the look on why you might want to go with the Sirui or why you might want to go with the Blazar. Now, the answer everybody's waiting for, if you're purely looking for that de-stretch wide look, like that wide anamorphic look, you don't care about the actual character the anamorphic's supposed to give you. You just want a clean, sharp lens that might give you a hint of flavor, that has full frame coverage, but with some very, very, very slight distortion on the edges. The Sirui is totally okay to buy for that. But if you're someone who's investing in anamorphic because you actually want the anamorphic look, you actually want to, you want that extra separation between your subject and the background. You actually want the painterly bokeh and the anamorphic flares and just like all the charm with anamorphics, but still just as sharp as the Sirui. They literally, to me, look just as sharp, but you're okay with Super 35 coverage, the Apex all day. A lot of the videos when I first got the Apex 50, I was still using it in full frame mode, but it's because I was doing a final 2:1, it's basically a 16:9 final crop, and that cropped out the vignetting. When I do the actual review on the 35 Apex, we'll go over coverage and all that. I don't want to go over all that in this video. This video is about the Sirui. So there are creative workarounds to, get more of a full frame image. Aside of that workaround, I also just do clear image zoom on the Sony cameras. And so I'll just crop in 1.2x times, and that literally covers most of the Apex lenses. It is kind of a hassle to do that, but the look that you get out of it, all the extra charm, all the extra anamorphic look that you're getting out of the Apex is worth it to me. So again, if you want just really clean, you don't really care about the traditional anamorphic look, you're going to be totally fine with the Sirui. But if you want more of that actual anamorphic look, which to me, it's kind of what's the hassle of going through all this unless you're going after anamorphic look, the Apex is the way to go. They're both really, really strong lenses. Autofocus performance is almost head to head when it comes to majority of scenarios. And then when it comes to like any quirks, like weird focus shifting or the camera's getting confused because of the bokeh or something, I don't know. Whatever quirks that one of the lenses have, the other lens has a very similar quirk to it. So I think it just comes with the technology. They're coming out at the same time. So I'm sure there's certain paths that are getting crisscross on both of these lenses. So again, very similar, but the Apex has a more true anamorphic look, but the Sirui can cover full frame technically. So that's all I got for you. That's the end of this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys maybe learned some stuff on here. Again, if you're into all this anamorphic stuff, subscribe. I'll have a review coming out on the Apex 35. I have a review coming out on the Blazar 40mm, a review on the DZO 65 macro anamorphic coming out. I have a set of Mercuries I want to work on. So I just love all anamorphics. I know I talk about Blazar a lot, but that's because they're freaking releasing so much stuff nonstop. And all of it's so good. All of it aligns with my creativity and the type of looks that I love. But I still love every other lens coming out. And I appreciate brands trying. But I am not purely biased to Blazar. Just for my eye and the type of work that I like to do, the look of the Blazar lenses align with that more than what Sirui and Laowa currently has. Granted, I have not tried Laowa's new large format anamorphics. But yes, I don't think you'll go wrong with any of these purchases, but personally, if I'm going to go through the hassle of de-stretch and all that kind of stuff, I'd rather just get the true anamorphic, classic look, which is the Apex. I like the Blazar lens a little bit more because it does have more character, and it definitely has more character when it matters.